We have some massive news in the college football landscape on this fine Friday. We got the SEC and the Big Ten announcing the formation of a joint advisory group of university presidents, chancellors, and ADs. So obviously we hear something like this, we're like, I think we understand what that means, but we know somebody who definitely understands what that means. So we put out the bat signal, and On3's very own Pete Nakos reports on anything and everything, joining the program to talk it up with us and kind of make sense of all this. Pete, looking fresh, wearing the robe back, just jumping in on Friday, swinging into the action. I'll just start here. Like, what does this mean? What does this mean over right now with this joint advisory group?
You know, I think this is the formation of obviously this advisory committee that really at the end of the day, JD has a lot of questions to try to figure out about what the NCAA is and what's it doing and what college football, to be really honest with you, should look like at the end of the day. I think that this advisory group is going to tackle things like the transfer portal, tampering, the future of college sports, all these antitrust lawsuits that really could result in billions of dollars having to be paid out to athletes and former athletes. And I'm sure that there's going to be some conversations too, right? Some like revenue sharing conversations. What role should the college football playoff play? And I mean, at the end of the day, the Big Ten and the SEC are the two biggest brands, right? The two richest conferences in the country. And I mean, that's where all the power is in college sports. So it's not really a surprise to see them coming together and forming this group. And this has been kind of months in the making.
My first thought after seeing this was like, okay, this is the answer to what the NCAA isn't enforcing. Like, is this going to replace the NCAA, or what can we see here long term with the joint formation like this?
Yeah, I think it's like a little too early to maybe jump to an assumption one way or the other. I think a lot of people have thought, though, for a long time that the NCAA is way too big. It has no right to govern like a UMass football team in the Alabama and Ohio State and Michigans of the world. And obviously, though, you're right, the NCAA governs like D2 and D3. I mean, that's a lot of schools, that's a lot of athletes, and that's a lot of athletes dealing with very different day-to-day things at the same time. I think the other thing, too, that we also have to look at is the NCAA is like dealing with all these legal troubles, right? Like there's the National Labor Relations Board out in LA that could classify athletes as employees. Like that'd be massive, man. And then you have some other antitrust lawsuits that could really force the hand. And I don't think Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti want to just sit around and wait for things to happen. I think if there's a takeaway from today, it's like, hey, we're going to take some action and try to figure out what the hell is happening.
And Pete, my first thought, or I guess another thought I had along with, is this replacing the NCAA, is like, why now? Is this something where the Nico Iamaleava in Tennessee thing, like that was the last snowflake that caused the avalanche, or has this been something that's like been brewing for months, maybe even years, like you alluded to earlier?
Yeah, I think that this has been boiling up for a little while, but at the same time, this week, it isn't not on purpose. Like, I think that what happened at Tennessee and the NCAA stepping in, I think it kind of all comes together the way it has. And I think that, I mean, Greg Sankey spoke to Yahoo's Ross Dellinger today, and Ross put out a really informative story. And he talked about how Greg Sankey talked about how maybe the NCAA is trying to get involved in some of these enforcement situations. Maybe those aren't really the big problems that the NCAA should be looking at. And obviously, if Greg Sankey feels that way, there's a reason. And now he's going to go lead up a joint advisory committee with his counterpart in the Big Ten.
And it feels like uncharted territory. Is there like an impact we'll see right away of like, okay, in 2024 and during the college football season, this will impact the sport in X, Y, and Z way? Or this will be something like over the long haul, we'll start to see more and more subtle changes to the sport?
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to be like an immediate impact, right? Like, I don't think like at SEC Media Day, some like major thing is going to be announced. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. But the last thing no, I'm good. But the last thing that I'd like to, not the last thing, but the thing I'm trying to get to here is revenue sharing, things like that. Like, those are big time things that these conferences are going to have to make the decision on. People have said forever that the NCAA is not going to be able to be the one to really lead that. Conferences are, and these two conferences stepping up to do something.
Do you think we're in a world where we're going to see like another conference jump into this thing? Like, will we see the ACC or the Big 12? Will they have their own, formation together? Could they join into this thing? Like, where is this headed from here? What's the next step?
That's a great question. I think that there's just a reason why the ACC and the Big 12 were not included in this, and that's because the Big 10 and the SEC know at the end of the day that they know where the money is, they know who has the power, and if they wanted the Big 12 and ACC in it, it would have happened already.
Interesting. Okay, so this is an SEC and Big 10 party, and no one else is invited just yet. Is this like the conferences almost taking back what they believe is theirs versus the NCAA? Because that's almost the theme of this last week has been like pushing back against the NCAA. How much of this is against the NCAA, and how much of this is just like, hey, we're looking out for the best interest of our student athletes, of our conferences. We have some power, and so we're going to kind of try and act as independently and proactively as possible.
I think that this has a lot to do with the SEC and the Big Ten trying to look out for college sports as a whole, not exactly taking a jab at the NCAA, but more so saying like, hey, we know you have a lot going on. We need to start doing some things to figure out what's going to be in the best interest of our elite conferences. So that could mean things like the Joint Advisory Group having a couple of meetings and then approaching Charlie Baker in Indianapolis and saying like, hey, these are the things that we want to see happen. Or maybe they have some conversations, and at the end of the day, they approach Charlie Baker and say, Charlie, or President Baker, whatever you want to call him, maybe maybe college football is not made to be part of the NCAA anymore. Maybe it is time to break away and really create that new conference, and then maybe we see the ACC and Big 12 get involved.
Maybe they go in there just super casual and call him Chuck. Hey, Chucky B, here's the deal, baby. Here's how we're feeling. This is what we want to talk about. I think that could be a good way to go. Pete, it's always what's going on, never like how's it going with you. How do you feel about this? As someone that covers the sport as closely as you do and, the different angles that you get to cover it at, like how do you feel? What was your reaction upon seeing this?
It wasn't really like a big surprise. I think my takeaway was like, okay, we're finally going to get serious here, right? Like you continue to hear of like employment, revenue sharing, what's going to happen to it's really redundant, man. So it's almost encouraging from where I sit to know that that Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are really going to try to get this ball moving more. And by no means do I want to I don't know how it will all end, but I think today is a really good step in the right direction.
Golly, man. Like that Bob Dylan song, the times, they are a-changing. Pete, appreciate you, man, jumping on the drop of a hat to talk some college football, some collegiate athletics, put out the bat signal, and you jump on, man. We appreciate you, and I have no doubt there's probably more news coming, so we'll do it again here real soon, man.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much, Shady.
Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.